Okay, we'll get started. Um, Good afternoon, and I want to thank you all for taking the time to join our webinar, complimentary webinar by Solomon Admissions Consulting. The title of our webinar today is How to Gain Admission to Stanford and Ivy League Universities. I'm conducting the webinar. My name is Cathleen Sheils. I'm the Senior Associate Director of College Counseling and a Senior Consultant for Solomon Admissions Consulting. I am the former Director of Admissions at Cornell University, where I joined Cornell after graduating in 1989, received my bachelor's and master's degrees from Cornell, spent half my time on campus as an active researcher, and then half of my tenure of 15 years being involved in college admissions. I rose to the level of Director of Undergraduate Admissions, where I was responsible for reviewing, recruiting and reviewing applicants and in making final admissions decisions for the undergraduate colleges at Cornell, which included over 100 majors. Although this webinar today is titled How to Gain Admission to Stanford and Ivy League Universities, it certainly is applicable to top universities overall, as we see more and more colleges and universities entering the realm of highly selective admissions, which means very low admit rates. Typically, I'm working with students who are looking to gain admission to top 20 colleges with admit rates below 10%, and with several of those colleges having admit rates below 5%. During this presentation, I'll be giving you a lot of insight into what colleges are looking for within their applicants, from both my own perspective in being a professional admissions team member at Cornell University and in my role now as a senior consultant with Solomon Admissions, who's working directly with families and students who are seeking admission to highly selective colleges and universities. So my perspective will come from both points of view. I am one of many consultants that works for Solomon Admissions. We're a team of over 100 consultants. One of the advantages that we bring to the admissions landscape for our students and families is that we all worked at top 20 public and private colleges and universities. We have read applications, we've read pools of applicants, and we've been involved in making final admissions decisions, serving on admissions committees. These slides show you the depth of our team. As I said, I'm one of 100 consultants that supports families who are working with Solomon Admissions. As you can see, we come from the top private and public universities across the country, and have depth of experience both working in the admissions office as professional team members in reviewing applications, and now working one-on-one with families. Although we are all tagged with a specific college or university that we may have worked for, it's important to understand that in our profession as admissions consultants, we work with a range of colleges and universities now. We really know the breadth of the top 50 colleges and universities, and in particular, the top 20 colleges and universities, and what they're looking for in their applicants. We stay abreast. We attend our professional association meeting every year. We do professional development training every month. We keep in contact with our colleagues in the field, and we actively recruit strong consultants who are at top 20 colleges and universities to join our team. So our team can be a mix of those who were recently engaged in college admissions at the university level, and those who, like myself, who have depth of experience both in college admissions and with Solomon Admissions Consulting. So why is it important to really understand the admissions landscape, and why are you engaged in this webinar today? What's really important to understand is that admit rates are continuing to decline. That's really no secret to those of us who are in the profession, and for those of you who are becoming engaged in college admissions and thinking about the college admissions landscape, what colleges are looking for. I've been in the profession over 20 years now, and when I was at Cornell University, you know, one of our goals is to continue to become more and more selective while admitting, quote, the right students for our institution. When I first started in admissions in 2004, Cornell University had an admit rate of about 23%. When I left in 2016, after 12 years of being there and being a leader for 6 of those years as director, our admit rate came down to 15%. In this last admission cycle, it was down below 9%. With each change in the college admissions environment, we see an increase in applications to top tier schools. Those changes have come about through the Common Application, where it became easier for students to submit one application to multiple colleges. That's one driver of the increase in applications. Another most recent driver has been test optional, where students see the test optional concept as being perhaps of interest to them. And so therefore colleges are reaping the benefit of seeing a higher percent of students applying to their colleges and universities. The Supreme Court recent decision around not using race in college admissions has increased the number of applications. So when you see changes that policy changes, institution changes that you see coming about in college admissions, it naturally leads to an increase in applications. So why care about this subject and why care about this work is it's increasingly becoming more difficult to gain admission into top colleges. And at Solomon Admissions Consulting, we keep track of the trends and we ensure that our students are aware of what colleges and universities are looking for. Even within the increase in applications, we are still seeing our students successfully admitted to top schools. You have to look beyond the numbers. The majority of students to top colleges and universities do have strong academics. Doesn't end there. I could have never admitted my class solely on top academics. We would look at academics first, and a certain number of students would not pass the academic review, but we still had more students in our applicant pool than we could admit based on our first year enrollment goals. So it's not just a quantitative process, and it's important to understand that. What this slide shows you is Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford refuse over 60% of the applicants that they see with a GPA of a 4.0 and an SAT score of 1600. We know those are perfect scores. Stanford refuses 70% of students with perfect SAT scores. So what this is illustrating is quantitative gets your foot in the door, gets you that initial review, but it's not enough. Here's some of Solomon Admissions Consulting average acceptance rates, admit rates in 2022. We have showcased some of the colleges and universities in which our students were successfully admitted to. This data shows colleges and universities where we had at least 20 students apply in the 2021-2022 application cycle and saw themselves admitted. That's the last column. The first column is the national admit average for that particular college or university in 2005. The admit rate for that college or university in 2022. And as you can see, they are all drastically down from 2005. And the third column shows you our admit rate. And in future slides, I'll show you how we get to that above average admit rate. But this slide is showing you that colleges and universities, as I said, continue to see an increase in applications, which obviously results in a decline in the admit number. What's happening is, even with their increase in applications, their first year enrollment class, their first year class is not growing. So colleges don't have a lot of flexibility in the number of students they can bring into their first year class. Those numbers are set by college leadership. They are set based on first year course space, the number of faculty, dormitories, the number of staff, etc. So those numbers do not typically increase, and if they do, they don't increase each year significantly. One thing I'd like to point out too is when you're looking at consulting firms to work with you, and you look at their admit data, one of the things that we're proud of is the last few years we have had our admit data verified by an outside firm. So our students and families share with us directly their admit data with their admission letters. So we have proof of the admit, and it's verified by an independent accounting firm before we publish our data. So how elite colleges evaluate applicants is both quantitative and qualitative. I shared with you earlier that it's not just quantitative, that the majority of students who are applying to selective, highly selective, or what you might call elite colleges have above average, if not perfect, GPAs, and if not perfect SAT and ACT scores. I'd also like to add AP scores as well. And so, you start there, and the first review a student receives in the admissions review process is an academic review. If they get through the academic review, then they'll go on for a deeper review, which is the personal section of the application. So really 50% of application review is quantitative, with about 25% on average of that review looking at standardized test scores, SAT, ACT. I'd also like to add AP or IB. AP is more common. AP scores because with test optional, we're seeing more and more students who need to submit AP scores, or where AP scores are seeing a higher admissions value. And then grades, class rank, if schools rank, the majority of schools don't rank anymore, course difficulty. Admissions committees are expecting students to take the 5 key courses every year, foundation courses of English, math, science, social science, and world language, all 4 years of high school. Those 5 courses are mandatory, regardless of what you plan to study in college. You are asked to take the highest level course rigor in those 5 courses over 4 years. That's 25% of review. Even though most high schools don't rank anymore, the Common Application does have a form that all college counselors at the high school level fill out. And one of the questions is asked, what is the highest GPA of this senior class? And what kind of course difficulty did this particular student take? So although we don't see a ranking, we do understand where a particular student falls in their class in regards to GPA and in regards to academic rigor. When high schools started to not rank anymore, colleges asked for this information. Then you can see that 50% of the review is what we call at Solomon Admissions. This is our niche in the marketplace called strategic positioning or choice of major. The majority of colleges that we see our students applying to, and really the majority of colleges, at the time of application, ask a student to identify their area of study or academic interest or major. Some will also offer undecided, but the majority of students are asked, what area of study are you interested in at our school? They're not usually held to it once they enroll, but at the time of admission, they are asked to select an academic area of interest. And that's the way in which their application will be reviewed within that lens of the academic area they noted. We call that strategic positioning, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a later slide. So 50% of application review is those qualitative factors, right? 25% personal statement, the supplemental essays, which are the essays for the college, any addendum information that is shared. 25% of the review is extracurricular activity review, the interview where offered, and recommendations. So as you can see, there's as much weight on the qualitative factors of a student's application as there is on quantitative. We often get this question in the environment post-COVID, is standardized testing really optional? And we tell our students, no, not really. The students that we're working with, again, are looking to gain admission to the top 50, at most the top 20 colleges and universities in the nation. And with that said, it really is not optional. To really be a truly competitive candidate, you really need to submit SAT or ACT scores. You'll also notice in the news that there are some colleges that are reinstituting the mandatory submission of standardized testing. And we've seen that with Dartmouth, we've seen that with MIT, and I believe Yale in some, they are looking for standardized testing, although they'll take AP scores. So we're seeing more and more colleges add this on, and I think we're going to see more in the future because they're really looking for an objective academic measure. Yes, they'll look at your high school grades, they'll look at your high school rigor, but they also want to see an objective measure, a measure that shows a student's academics against their national peers, not just their high school class. So that's really why colleges are reinstituting an objective academic measure. We do advise our students when to submit scores. We want them to be in the top 25 percentile of scores submitted amongst the admit group. So while it's not a one size fits all, whether we recommend a student submit scores or not, we do recommend all of our students test. We do recommend that they test to their ability. And then once testing is complete, we help them analyze their scores and decide if they should submit their scores. I will say the majority of the students I work with do submit scores after earning scores in the top 25 percentile. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how Stanford reviews applications, and then we're going to talk about how the Ivy League reviews applications. This also can be a very similar strategy as to highly selective publics, as well as some of the more highly selective private institutions as well. How highly selective colleges review applications is fairly similar. Stanford is a bit unique, and we are preparing our students for evaluation like Stanford offers, whether they're applying to Stanford or not. We kind of use their model with all of our students because we find that successful. If you're planning for Stanford and the Ivies, you're really planning for all colleges. So we really start with that premise at Solomon Admissions. So how Stanford evaluates their applicants is they will recalculate a student's GPA. Most colleges will recalculate a GPA, and they'll only consider the 5 core classes of English, math, science, social science, and world language. I shared earlier, you want to take these 5 classes over the 4 years that you are in high school, regardless of what you're going to study in college. I'm constantly answering the question of, do I need math if I'm not going to be an engineer? Do I need social science if I'm going to be an engineer? And the answer is yes. Colleges are looking for the academic core classes taken. Recalculating a GPA simply means they're going to take out all the courses that are not core classes. So physical education, band, orchestra, art, any electives that you might take will not be in your GPA. So taking those classes to enhance a GPA is kind of a misnomer. Your GPA strength should really be on your core classes alone. Stanford will not calculate recalculate the GPA with 9th grade. So they'll just look at 10th and 11th. They do calculate flat grading. They don't do A minus, B plus, that sort of thing. So an A minus becomes an A B plus becomes a B. So just be mindful of that. When we are working with our students and we're telling them they need to earn A's, we mean A's, not A minuses. Stanford assigns every student applicant they see 6 separate ratings on a 1 through 5 scale, with 1 being the highest, 5 being the lowest. When we're working with students, when they first come to be a Solomon Admissions student, we actually help them see what their ratings might be at the time they start working with us. It's just a preliminary indication of how their application may be reviewed. And from that initial rating, we work with them to strengthen their ratings, right? We want them to understand how their application would be read at the time of joining Solomon Admissions, and ideally how it would be read once they are applying to colleges. So the 6 areas that Stanford is looking at is obviously grades and GPA. They're looking for students that have the highest grades in the most rigorous courses, and again, foundation courses. They're looking at standardized testing. They're looking at extracurricular. And extracurricular for us is defined as service and leadership in school and in the community. Service and leadership at a very deep level, not superficial, where a student is creating impact. The student is making a difference. And we work with students on this, and we work with students on helping them achieve a high extracurricular rating. Intellectual vitality. Stanford created this. This is basically intellectual curiosity, studying for the sake of studying, working outside of the classroom, research, blogging, coursework, college coursework, etc. This is intellectual vitality. Recommendations, high school recommendations. We work with our students on helping them identify strong recommendations, who will serve as recommenders, and how will they write a meaningful recommendation letter. And then finally, supplemental essays. Stanford has several supplemental essays that are unique to Stanford, and they're looking for certain characteristics in those essays. And again, we help guide our students in what Stanford is looking for. But these are the 6 separate ratings that Stanford uses. Ideally, you're looking for a 1 in each area, and that would move you closer to an admitted student. So again, a rating of a 1 is a clear admit. Very few students have a 1. A 2 is a very competitive applicant within the range of being admitted. 3, 4s, and 5s are really students who would not be admitted to Stanford. It's that competitive. So here's the most common profile of a refused or a denied student at Stanford. Academics 2 to 3, a testing rating 1 to 2, which would be high testing. They see a lot of high testers, but again, it's not enough. Extracurricular rating of 3 and 4, that's that superficial extracurricular. It's students who are not deeply engaged in service and leadership and who are not making an impact. Intellectual vitality of a 3 and 4, these are students that are not working beyond the classroom. They're not going above and beyond for their field of study. Lukewarm recommendations. I tell my students that 90% of the recommendations I saw at Cornell were pretty generic. They weren't very helpful. They weren't specific enough. So I help my students work with their recommenders to provide specific information. And then self-presentation essay writing or essay rating 2 to 3, decent, but not enough. Likely their essays don't have enough details. We're constantly striving for our students to provide details and specificity in their essays, make a strong connection to Stanford, and showing Stanford you are the type of student that they're looking for. This is a common profile of an admitted student to Stanford. Again, academic grades, everything's pretty much in the 1 to 2 area, recommendations being the least, but, confirming what you're saying about yourself in your application, confirming to the admissions committee that you're an admit. But you can see where intellectual vitality and the essays are really important to Stanford, and something that we really focus on with our students who are considering Stanford. How do they gain intellectual vitality experiences? How do they write very compelling essays that speak to what Stanford is looking for? An intellectual vitality rating of a 1, again, this is very important to Stanford. And, some examples of this are independent academic research with a college professor, possibly leading to being published in a journal. Several of our students will do research with a college professor. Depending on the tenure, the type of research, and their subject area, they may become published. But the art of doing research is really important to get a high intellectual vitality rating. Substantial work on founding and or developing a nonprofit or working with a nonprofit related to their area of academic interest. Again, this is creating impact, not superficial. Strong intellectual vitality essays where a student really demonstrates to Stanford that they love learning, love learning outside of school. They have a passion for learning. It's not superficial. It's not fake. It's part of who they are. And they will bring that love of learning, that intellectual curiosity, we call it, they will bring that to Stanford. So overall, Stanford wants a student to take ownership of their education outside of the classroom. They want to see students that will enrich the Stanford student campus, and the applicant is passionate about learning. So Stanford has a question. This is one of their supplemental questions. And I mentioned to you that they have several supplemental questions. They do, Columbia does. There are certain colleges that have, 7 to 9 supplemental essay questions, and Stanford is one of them. And this is one of their prompts. And it's 100 to 250 words. So when you see a prompt that small, you really got to cut to the chase. You really have to, every word matters, right? And we help our students with an outline. We help them draft their essays, considering the word count, considering what the question is asking. This essay, the Stanford community is deeply curious, intellectual curiosity, as I said, driven to learn in and out of the classroom. They're saying it right there. Reflect on an idea or experience that makes you genuinely excited about learning. This question is very important to them. They're trying to figure out which students enjoy the art of learning for learning, not just getting good grades, but learning for the sake of learning, going above and beyond in their learning, not really tying it into academic coursework, but tying this question into something outside of the classroom. And really honing in on their intellectual vitality experiences. If you can tie this question into your research, or if you can tie this question into a blog you created, or a podcast that you're delivering, a YouTube channel that you've created, a curriculum that you've written, a self-published book, that's what you want to connect to, not traditional academic coursework that other students can connect to. So Stanford, all in all, and the Ivies, they admit the most compelling applicant. They heavily weigh the supplemental essays. The common application is really 2 parts. Half of the common application is questions that can be answered and submitted to all colleges, and half the application is supplemental to the college in which you're applying to. The common application is just a platform that students use. Over 1,000 colleges now are members, but you are submitting your application to the college. The more selective a college or university is, the more and more important the supplemental essays are, and the weight of the supplemental essays. And then a little bit of difference between Stanford and the Ivies is the intellectual vitality rating, and that they really don't give a significant boost to early action applicants, unlike the Ivies, who both have early decision or restrictive early action. All right, I'm going to go over how Ivy League colleges evaluate applicants. You'll see some similarities to Stanford. You'll see a bit of difference. But again, we're helping our students navigate the range of the top colleges and universities and the way in which they look at applicants. So the Ivy League assigns applicants 2 separate ratings on varying scales. Most use a 1 through 5 scale, but it might be 1 through 7, 1 through 4. But really what you're looking for is you want the highest rating regardless of the institution you're applying to, right? However they rate applicants. Every college, the Ivies included, you saw it at Stanford, has an academic rating. You want to get the highest score you can in that academic rating. Again, that's grades, GPA, testing, rigorous courses. Every college has an extracurricular or personal rating. And that's, again, service and leadership at a deep level, not a superficial level, making an impact, making a difference because you were engaged. If we use Dartmouth as an example, they have a 5-point score. Again, you want the highest rating on each of the 5 points. The highest rating would be a student who is in the top 1 to 2% of their class. We used to say top 10%. We used to say top 5%. Now we're saying top 1 to 2% of your class to get the highest rating. You're taking the most challenging course load. you have excelled in the 5 core classes and you've taken the highest level course offered in your high school. As an admissions professional, I had to review what your high school offered. Your high school sends us a school profile. We look at your school profile to see what kind of curriculum was offered to you, and we expect you to step up to that curriculum. We're not comparing you against students from other high schools. We're looking at what curriculum was offered to you and that you stepped up to it. Your SAT or ACT scores are the 99th percentile nationwide. Strong letters of recommendation. When a teacher can say they were one of the best students that they've ever had, and that they give very specific anecdotes of what that means to them. They don't paraphrase your application. They give us a recommendation that's personal to them, how they saw you in the classroom, how they saw you with your peers, how you excelled in the assignments that were given, et cetera. It has to be personal and give very specific examples of why they are giving you a high recommendation, not a synopsis of your application. I already know what your GPA is. I already know what courses you took. I already know you're on the swim team. They don't have to tell me that. Love of learning as evidenced by research or other ways in which you have learned outside the classroom, and a potential to be the leader in your academic field. This is kind of a mid-tier student, could be admissible, probably with the right major. They would probably be admissible in a less popular major, would probably be challenged to be admitted in one of the most popular majors. Choice of major has a lot to do with admissibility. So top 5 to 10% of their high school class took the most challenging course load. SAT or ACTs are in the 95th percentile, strong but not exceptional letters of recommendation. Less intense love of learning. They might not have research, but they've taken some online courses or a summer course, and that they have some level of learning outside the classroom, some level of leadership, and some level of service. In order to get a 5 out of 5 on depth of leadership and service, or the personal rating, we are really looking for a student who's really making an impact in their community. Local is the best. Having an impact in their community, and ideally an impact in a way that demonstrates an interest in their field of study. So, having an impact doing environmental work because they're applying to environmental engineering, or having an impact in the ESL community because they're applying to linguistics. So ideally, if a student can make a connection to their community-based work, a nonprofit they formed, or a nonprofit that they're working with, that they are helping to transform, and they're showing impact and results. Published authorship, journal articles. Some of our students are publishing books. Regeneron research, accolades in music, accolades in STEM competitions, awards at national level. I mean, these are accomplishments, again, for that top 5% of students. And we do help guide our students on what kinds of experiences to gain so they can enhance their rating in the extracurricular personal rating area. This would be kind of an average student at most Ivies. Awards at the regional level, very common. Significant commitment in a few activities. Student body president, maybe they're an all-state orchestra, captain of a varsity team, nationally ranked debater, well-rounded, involved, but not maybe rising to the top 5% of activities that you see in the admit group. When thinking about Ivy League admissions, you do want to consider if you are a student who is liberal arts and science, all of those factors that I just talked about are true. Same with College of Engineering. If you're a student who's interested in engineering, it is important to understand that any undergraduate college, whether it be within the Ivies or even within the publics, who have a separate engineering college, usually have an engineering admissions process on top of what I shared with you, which simply means that engineering faculty are often on the admissions committee. There is significant emphasis on grades, especially in math and science, significant emphasis on test scores, and they are looking for engineering experience beyond the traditional robotics and coding and some of the other more traditional experiences students have. They really are looking for students who have engineering experience. Applying early decision or early action is often a question that we get. And we do recommend that all of our students apply to a college early decision and maybe some early action publics as well. The admit percentages are greater for early admission. It's just a fact. Some colleges that might have a 7% admit rate in overall average, their early admit rate might be as high as 14%. And I have a slide, so it's double. Those odds are worth taking when you're looking at single-digit admit numbers. So we do recommend our students apply early decision. But what we do recommend is that it's a strategic decision. Long ago are the days where I'm going to apply to my dream school because I've always wanted to go there. It's too risky to not have your early decision college not be a strategic decision. What I mean by that is it could be a reach, a one-notch up reach from a target, but it can't be a beyond reach school because you're not going to get in. I mean, a reach, yes, we would advise a reach. A beyond reach, no. And we're very clear about that with our students, what we see as early decision schools that are within a student's range or beyond their range, beyond reach, because it's too risky today to not have a very strategic review of early decision and where you could be competitive. The early decision admit rates are greater. That's because there's fewer applicants. It's still competitive, but there are fewer applicants. A lot of Ivy League schools and top universities are increasingly pushing the limits on early decision and admitting almost 50% of their class early decision. I mean, I was at Cornell when we were pushing up 35%, and that was high. And now schools are really pushing up to 50%. Applications are read more closely because there's a little bit more time because there's fewer applicants. Borderline applicants who might be waitlisted during regular decision are likely admissible in early. And if you're not applying early decision, that means your regular decision applications, which you'll have both, early decision, and you get your regular decision applications ready for submission in case early decision does not work out the way you wanted it to. But if you choose to apply regular decision and not early decision, you're increasing the competitiveness for your early decision applications. You know, the vast majority of students do apply regular. Those applicant pools are very, very competitive. So we do recommend our students look at early decision, restricted early action and early action colleges, and we help advise them on which ones to look at where we believe their narrative would be compelling and where they would have a strong competitive review. This slide just demonstrates to you the change in admit number or admit percentage between early decision and regular, and what percent of the first year class colleges are filling in early decision. Early decision is binding, colleges like that. And they can lock in, you know, almost half their class, at least a third, if not half of their class through early decision. And you can see what I said about admit numbers being 2 to 3, 4 times higher, in some cases 5 times higher in early decision than regular. So strategic positioning, this is something I brought up earlier. I'm transitioning a little bit. This is where a student is crafting their narrative. So when you are applying to college and you have to identify, you have to let the particular college who know where you're applying, what your academic area of interest is, what your area of study is, what your possible major is. And most colleges in the common application have a drop-down menu. And they ask you this question: pick your first choice, pick your second choice, pick your third choice. And we know that not all majors are as competitive as others. When I was at Cornell, we had 100+ majors for the first year class. Some of our majors we had to do nothing for, and we recruited a class. We had more applicants than we knew what to do with, and very low admit numbers, 2%. And some of our majors, a little less known, similar content as a popular major, and yet the admit rate was higher, up to 20%. Could be a difference between 2% and 20%. An example of that would be biology. Biology is a very popular major at all colleges. Economics is a very popular major at all colleges. Computer science is a very popular major at all colleges. Biomedical engineering is a very popular major at all colleges. But yet, if you want to do biology, you could do anthropology. Anthropology is a form of biology. Little less known, little less popular. So we really believe there are more than one way to meet your academic goals. We also know that 50% of students change their major once they're in college. I, as the director of admissions at Cornell, I was very methodical in making sure that each of the 100 majors at Cornell had adequate enrollment at the time of admission. To see by sophomore year, 50% of students changed their major. So how we admitted students and how they graduated was really vastly different. Some students may have joined Cornell knowing they wanted to change their major. A lot of students joined Cornell not thinking that was going to happen, but that's what happens. It happens at every college and university. It happens because students are exposed to a lot of different academic programs. They're exposed to new courses. They're exposed to faculty that they connect with, and things change and evolve. And they might see their strengths not as strong in college in this field, but stronger in this field. Most colleges have a means to allow students to change their major or transfer between colleges. The only caveat to that might be computer science, where you have to directly apply at some schools because the demand is so high, and at some schools, undergraduate business. Those are really the two outliers, but otherwise your choice of major it can be anything really, and then you can solidify it in college, or you can change. So strategic positioning really refers to the choice of major you prepare your college narrative around. So when we're working with students, we help them identify a strategic positioning. And then our work with them is through that lens. So we're working with them on academic, extracurricular, and intellectual vitality. We provide coaching in those 3 areas to help them become the strongest applicant they can be within their choice of major, AKA strategic positioning. The strategy or strategic position that we often recommend is aligned with their goals, aligned with their college interests, leverages their strengths, but is often in an undersubscribed field of study. So we help students identify and leverage strengths, and I have some examples, because we know that colleges are looking to build a first-year class. Diversity is widely used. When we think of diversity, we think of race and ethnicity. But as importantly, colleges are looking for academic diversity. They want to see students that want to come in and study a range of disciplines. They don't just want to see biologists. They don't want to just see economists. They don't want to just see computer scientists. So our students, we really help them understand the academic diversity they can bring to the college or university in which they're interested in. We want our students to be a strong fit with their identified college major. That's the lens in which their college application will be reviewed, in the anthropology lens, the art history lens. And we want to make sure that their application is as strong as possible, stands out in that lens. It's really a misnomer that colleges are looking for well-rounded students. They're really looking for angular students who are focused, who are applying to a major and where they can demonstrate experience in that major. It's a cohesive narrative. I tell my students, I want your application to have a bow or a ribbon that runs through it. A ribbon that runs through it, we tie it like a bow. It makes sense to the admissions reader. The average applicant is going to get a 10-minute read, if not less. And there's no room for the admissions reader to have to figure anything out. Your application should flow. And it should read like a narrative for your intended field of study. So top colleges are not looking for well-rounded students. They are looking for students who have some sense of what they want to study and have evidence of that area of interest and their love of learning. Admissions committees don't like admitting well-rounded students. They want students who are focused on one or two areas, and that is shown throughout their application. A couple of case studies to point this out. Undeclared. So we have students that come to us with some very popular perceptions, and they're really a microcosm of the applicant pool. And we help them understand that. And that's undecided. It's business and economics. It's computer science and engineering. It's pre-med. The majority of students have interest in one of those areas. And we help them see that that's not strategic, that the majority of applicants to highly selective schools fall into those same areas. And that's not what we want for our students. We want our students to be in the applicant pool and to be the type of applicant that colleges are looking for, not to, be the applicant that the majority of students are and that the admissions committee is reading all day long. So really, we don't recommend undeclared or undecided. When you're applying to a college or university that has the depth of majors that most do, you really should identify a major. So when students come to us, they fill out a questionnaire, we get their transcript, and we get an activity list or a resume. Whether they come to us in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, or 11th grade, we take a look at all of that information. They may have test scores. They may have a GPA by then. We look at what their college goals are, what type of schools they're looking to attend. We look at their choice of major at that particular time. And again, it's usually one of the most popular ones. And we look at all of that information. We have a conversation with our students, and then we help them identify a strategy that makes sense for them. In this particular case, the strategy for this students was linguistics. And that really came about because of their work in theater and seeing the connection between language and theater. So this student pivoted in that direction with our guidance and really got into the linguistics area, did research, really focused on that area, and saw himself admitted to Chicago, Georgetown, and NYU. Again, that shift in thinking, that shift in connection, but yet still within the realm of looking at the goals that he had. This particular student was a recruited athlete, D1. Athletes, regardless whether you're being recruited or you're an athlete and you don't want to play sports where you go, but athleticism has been a big part of your high school career, it's not a good idea to talk about that in your essays. 1 and 2 students are athletes. It's not a showcase kind of activity. It's very common. We might help you piece out, pull apart what an athlete means to you, what you've done in the sport. Sometimes it's the uniforms that you might want to study the fiber, or maybe it's timing, or maybe it's analytics or something, but we're going to help you showcase an element of your background without being focused on sports, because it's just, way too often seen in admissions. So this particular student, we helped her pull out her strengths in physics. Women are still underrepresented in physics. She was interested in a top liberal arts school, and she was admitted to College of William and Mary. We see students sometimes with limited extracurricular experiences. This would be an older student, probably a late 11th grader. If they're younger, we're going to help them gain extracurricular experiences. This particular student had a lot of travel, was interested in art, visited art galleries, we helped her see that connection and that connection to art history, which was an undersubscribed field of study. We helped her leverage that experience, helped her analyze art, think about how she views art and what she would bring to the campus culture. And she was accepted at USC and NYU. A few more specific case studies. We see a lot of students who are interested in going on to medical school. In biology in particular, I read biology at Cornell, and 99% of the students mentioned wanting to be a doctor, which was a little bit frustrating because we were not a medical school. We were an undergraduate school of liberal arts and sciences. We wanted to hear how you wanted to study biology in a liberal arts and science context, not on, going on to medical school. But why do you want to study biology? Most of the students we work with, we wouldn't recommend they apply to biology. This is a very general pre-med profile that would not be admitted to Ivy's or Stanford. So what we do with students who are interested in medicine is we really look at what else they're doing and help them identify those interests. In this particular case, this is another art student. And we really leaned into her artwork and her love of history and her grades in history. She did an art supplement, because you can be any major and go to medical school. There are 9 courses you have to take at the undergraduate level. You have to do research and the MCATs and a strong GPA. That's what you need for medical school. And it can be any major to get those 9 courses because they're pretty generic: biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, microbiology, genetics, calculus, and a GPA, undergraduate research, and MCATs. And that's what you need for medical school. We see a lot of students who are interested in computer science. Sometimes computer science is found in an engineering school. Sometimes it's found in arts and sciences. This is by far the most applied to major at any college. It is the most competitive major at any college. And most of the profiles look like this, pretty much similar: robotics, coding, good grades, good scores, but not much else. And it's especially challenging for students who are considered majority students, which are male, Caucasian, and Asian students predominantly. If I have a student interested in computer science, I often co-position them so they have a strategy for colleges where you don't have to go directly computer science, and they have a strategy for where you have to go directly computer science. But the strategy is interlocking. The work that they're working on for computer science, the extracurricular intellectual vitality, can also serve as unique for computer science as well. Here's a case study of a student interested in computer science engineering. Engineering is interesting. If you are applying to a college of engineering, most engineering colleges have multiple engineering fields, right? With computer science being one, biomedical being one. They are the most popular were offered. Civil engineering is the least popular, followed by environmental engineering. All engineering colleges, the first year of engineering, you are all doing the same curriculum. You're taking physics and calculus and courses like that, some general engineering courses. Your second year, you affiliate or concentrate. In your application essay, like, I recommend the strategy of civil engineering quite often. It's very interesting. There's a lot of intellectual vitality experience you can get. There's a lot of extracurricular experience you can get. You can write your essay about that. You're admitted to a college of engineering, and you may stay with civil, or you may affiliate with a different type of engineering field as a sophomore. But again, your first year, you're all the same. So, students get kind of hung up on that they're going to be locked in. And at most college campuses, you are not locked in unless you're applying to computer science. At about 12 schools, you have to go directly. Otherwise, you can employ a strategic positioning and leverage your surrounding interests in addition to computer science or engineering. Here's a business economics student. The most important thing is most colleges don't have an undergraduate business major or business school. A few do, you know, Wharton and at Penn, Dyson at Cornell, Stern at NYU, Ross at Michigan, but most do not. So you really shouldn't be talking about business because they don't have a business program. Econ is not business. I read the business and economics applicants at Cornell, and we had 10 business concentrations. Most students talked only about finance. If I saw a student talk about one of our other concentration areas, I was elated. When I'm working with students who are interested in business, I often co-position them as well, so they can be competitive within an undergraduate business program. We look at an undersubscribed concentration like business operations. And I also help them be prepared for a liberal arts school or a liberal arts, an arts and sciences college within a national university. Here's a case study of a business economics applicant where we really leveraged his public policy experience, you know, and his entrepreneurial spirit in a very unconventional way. And again, we probed him, what his interests were, what he was engaged in, and we leveraged that so he would be able to use those experiences in his application. We do work with a few students who are interested in the accelerated BSMD programs. And again, we have to help them be a strong BSMD applicant as well as a non-BSMD applicant for the schools that they are looking at that don't have that program. The key with the BSMD is you've got to be a unique medical school applicant, primarily focusing on working in under-resourced areas with under-resourced communities. I've worked with several students who have gone to Brown-Plebe, and Brown has an emphasis on rural and rural communities. So I really encourage my students to seek out that experience. So knowing what each particular school is looking for is part of what we offer and can help our students navigate their experiences to be a strong fit for the colleges that they're looking at. Yeah, again, this was a student who focused on under-resourced areas of medicine, and meaning, you know, not oncology. And I mean, once you get to medical school, you can study what you want, but most students today are saying oncology because, you know, it's very common and they're exposed to that, may have had, you know, that exposure within their family. But the more we can talk about less known areas of medicine research and working in underserved communities, that's important to bring out in your BSMD applications. We know that research is very important to increase a student's intellectual vitality rating. So we have instituted a Solomon Research Scholars Program. Our students gain research with our advisement on directly securing research with a college professor, especially our older students, our 11th graders. Students who are younger and come to us or come to us late and don't have research experience, we now have a program under our umbrella in which we can help our students gain research experience. We have a 10-week online high school research program where students work with a PhD student or graduate from a top university on a 15-page research paper over that course of 10 weeks. As a consultant, the students that I'm working with that are engaged in this program, I write up a summary for the research mentor because I want to make sure the research experience aligns with their strategic positioning. And, you know, and we can help a student build their narrative. They're paired with this is an add-on to our consulting package and allows our students, like I said, to gain intellectual vitality experience. For younger students, they can use this to propel their research in future years with a college professor. It helps them explore their area of study, their strategy at a deeper level, which strengthens their connection to their positioning. So in lots of ways, this has been a great additional element to the services that we provide our students. I'll end with a summary of those services, and then I'm happy to take questions that you might have. One-on-one consulting, what does that offer students and families who are working with Solomon Admissions Consulting? Strategic positioning, first and foremost, is really what we are known for. And I've been involved in admissions for a long time. I've seen several Supreme Court decisions. I've seen the implementation of the Common Application. I've seen standardized testing come and go. I've seen a lot of change in the industry, and I've seen applications continue to rise, and I've seen admit numbers continue to decline. The one thing that I can honestly say is the way in which we work with students each year has stood the test of time, really. My students are still seeing admits to top colleges because our process is solid, even amongst the changes that are occurring. And we stand by it and we deepen it. So our students who joined Solomon, and I said, you know, we have 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th graders and app year clients, students who are joining us late in 11th grade or the summer before 12th grade. We call them app year clients, application year. But our students, regardless of when they join us, they fill out a questionnaire. In that questionnaire, we get a sense of their goals. We get a sense of their interests. We get a sense of their achievements. We get a sense of their concerns. And we read that deeply as consultants before our first meeting. And with that questionnaire, we're starting to think about a student's strategy or what might work for a student. We think about their goals, their academic performance, and our experience working at one of these top colleges and how this student might be read. I shared with you that we offer our students a document where we give them ratings of how they might be read on this particular day. Then we offer coaching. Depending on the strategy, and the younger the student, I'm going to give more strategy options to think about. I think you might look at these 3 options. An older student, I'm going to say, look, you've got 2 years as this or 3 years as that. I'm going to recommend this strategy, and we're going to leverage your work and debate. We're going to leverage your Eagle Scout. We're going to leverage your environmental work, whatever the case may be, that, you know, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 choices that connects to what you're doing. And then we go into coaching. And coaching means that we are advising you on how to deepen and strengthen your academic profile, your extracurricular profile, your intellectual vitality profile. Those are the 3 areas we focus on. And we give you a coaching plan, and we are checking in with you and providing guidance on these 3 areas. The summer before senior year, we are working on your college list. We get input from our students and families on what colleges they're interested in, as importantly, the attributes that they're seeking in their college, and we create a college list. We do committee our college list. I, as a consultant, develop a list for my students, and I committee with my colleagues. Then I share that college list with my students, and it's put in categories, you know, of reach and target, and I often will share an early strategy. Then we work with our students on the application itself. We help them identify the areas of study in which to apply to at each college. Sometimes they're similar, sometimes there's a few nuances. And again, it's based around their strategic positioning and what they've built out. We'll find the best fit areas of study for them at each college we're working on together. We typically work on 3 to 10 colleges together. The personal statement, we will provide the topic and an outline in conversation with our students. We provide content review for that statement, back and forth with the consultant, and then it goes to an editor for a final edit. Addendum, if we need an addendum, any additional information, we'll provide that guidance. Supplemental essays. I shared with you that Stanford and the Ivies have several supplemental essays. We will help identify what those supplemental essays are. They change slightly each year. 2023 saw quite a bit of change in this area because a lot of colleges were really looking for a diversity question or added a diversity question. So we help our students with the topic and outline for each of the supplemental essays. We help them with content review, go back and forth. You know, I want the details, build out your story here. This is good content, but you have a gap here. It doesn't flow well. this is what Columbia is looking for. This is what Cornell is looking for. Our outlines are very specific to that college. And then a final edit. Recommendation letters, we provide guidance on securing strong recommendation letters. We will offer a mock interview for our students who have an interview request from the colleges in which they submitted an application. And then we obviously will do final application review prior to our students submitting their applications for review. And then obviously in between, we're answering questions, helping them navigate what might come up. Here's some of our admit letters from the past cycle. We are in March now, and we have our early decision results back, and our students are, some are still waiting for regular decision results before they make their final decisions. We do offer anybody on this webinar a 20-minute consultation with one of our advisors. You can either phone or email, and a colleague will schedule time to speak with you about maybe your particular situation, your students' goals and needs, how Solomon Admissions might be able to support you through this process. So I encourage each of you who are on this webinar today, take advantage of that.